Hi students, so we are discussing different ecosystem. In last class introduction, we discussed what is biotic, what is abiotic, what is habitat, what is ecosystem, what is biosphere, what is non-living things, what is living things, how it will depend on one organism to the another organisms. So we did one activity, also small activity. So in a small ecosystem, how many organisms we can find out. So in today's class, we are going to discuss the interdependence among the biotic components. So the interdependence among the biotic components. How the biotic components will depend one organisms to the another organisms. So biotic components is nothing but it's a living things. How the living organisms will depend on one organism to the another organisms. Interdependence. Interdependence among the biotic components. So, before going to discuss about this, how the interdependence among the biotic components, let's open your textbook from page number 105. So, it's they have given a diagrams. Look at these pictures. Page number 105. So, they are suddenly given interdependence among the biotic components. See, look at the pictures. The relationship between biotic components. Relationship between biotic components. First, in the base, what type of organisms is there? Like some grass is there, beans, carrot. And above the next level D, squirrel and rabbit. Next level snakes, fox. Next level all the hawks and the tiger. I think there are different type of organisms is there. So just I am writing here names like carrot and like grass and beans. So here rabbit is here, rabbit. And this rabbit is depending on carrot and grass. Like squirrel is there, squirrel. Squirrel is depending on carrot and beans like this. Snakes, fox depending on rabbit. Hawks are owls and finally tiger. Tiger also depending on rabbit. So the squirrel, hawks depending on the squirrels. This deer also eaten by the tigers. Some examples we have given. Look at how the interdependence among the organisms, among the biotic components. In the base, like carrots. So what is the food materials of rabbit? So the food material of rabbit is carrot and some like plants like grass. It will eat grass and carrots. So these are the food materials of the rabbits and squirrels. Then what is the food materials of snakes and fox? So these are rabbits and squirrels. What is the food materials of hawks or tigers? So these tigers also depending on this like rabbits and squirrels. Like this, we can call producers consumers, producers, consumers, primary consumers, secondary consumers. So last one is carnivores. We can call carnivores. We can divide like this. Or else we can divide producers. The one can prepare their own food is called as producers. So we will discuss about this. What is this producers? What is herbivores? What is decomposers? Decomposers. So there are some examples they have given. We will discuss about these tables or these diagrams. Look at what do the arrow in the figure indicates. The arrow marks is there from one diagram to the another diagram. So one organism to the another organism. What they indicate? Arrows indicate always from food to feeder. Food to feeder. For example, take here carrot. Carrots, this arrow marks is going like it's showing from carrot to rabbit. So these arrows indicate carrot to rabbit from food to feeder. Carrot is a food and the rabbit is a feeder. Arrows indicate food to feeder. So always, so what is the arrows between the snakes and rabbit? Rabbit is a food for the snakes. A rabbit is a food for snake. Rabbit is a food for tiger. Beans is a food for squirrel. Beans is a food for squirrel. Squirrel is a food for hawks or owls, eagles. So this arrows indicates food to feeder. Next question. Trace the path from grass to tiger. Grass to tiger. Path from grass to rabbit. Rabbit to tiger. This is the path from grass to tiger. So rabbit will depend. Tiger will depend on rabbit. Rabbit will depend on grass. Rabbit will depend on grass. On how many organisms is rabbit depend on? Question should be resolved very properly. On how many organisms? On how many organisms is rabbit depend on? So look at your pictures in your textbook pictures. How many organisms? Rabbit depend on 2 organisms. 1 and 2. Rabbit depend on 2 organisms. One is carrot, another one is grass. Next question. How many organisms depend on rabbit? How many organisms depend on rabbit? So 1 snakes, fox, tiger. 3 organisms will depend on rabbit. So 1 is snakes, fox and tiger. So there are different types of questions. So rabbit will depend on 2 organisms. How many organisms will depend on rabbits? 3 organisms. Like so twisted questions is there. Like this. From where does plants get the food? From where the plants get the food? Except food, what other things do animals need for their survival? So this is about producers. Plants comes under the producers because they can prepare their own food by the process of photosynthesis. In the presence of sunlight, in the presence of chlorophyll, they take water from the soil, they take carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, they will prepare the food materials. That's why plants are called as producers. Producers is nothing but they can prepare their own food by the process of photosynthesis. By the process of photosynthesis. Plants take carbon dioxide, water in the presence of sunlight. Sunlight is the main source of the plant for the preparation of food materials. So producers example is, best example is plants. Plants are producers. Not all plants are producers. Some plants cannot prepare their own food. What is herbivores? Herbivores is nothing but they cannot prepare their own food. They will depend on the producers. They cannot prepare their own food, but they will depend on the producer for the food purpose. Whether it is herbivores is only so they are vegetables, vegetarians. They will depend on the producers like plants. So next one is like in producers, consumers, primary consumers, secondary consumers is there. It's not given in your textbook in 8th class. In higher classes, we will discuss like primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumers. What is decomposers? What is the use of decomposers? Decomposers also called as recycler. Decomposer also called as recyclers because they decompose the dead bodies of plants and animals. Dead bodies of plants and animals. When animals die, for example, if dog is died before in front of your house on the road, you will get very bad smell, foul smell. We can't deal with that smell. What happens if the dead body still remains like this? What happens? We can't bear the such type of smell. So after a few days, what happens? The dog body, the skin, the whole body will be decomposed into the soil. Decomposed into the soil by decomposers. Examples: bacteria and fungi. Bacteria and fungi. These bacteria and fungi are very, very useful for the decomposing. While they are decomposing, plenty of nutrition is there in the body. When they decompose, they will mix it into the soil. So they will be when the nutrients are decomposed into the soil, plants will absorb the nutrients and they will grow and they will start bearing the fruit materials. Food material. It's like fruits. So these are the producers, herbivores and decomposers, also called as recyclers. So one question I will ask you: how do you appreciate decomposers? So write your own questions. How do you appreciate decomposers? If decomposers are not there, what is the disadvantages of the decomposers are not there? If any body, plant or animal died, when the animals died, when human beings died, they will bury. So when the animals die, they will throw it on the soils. What happens? If the bodies remains like 1 month or 1 year like this, what happens? So everywhere will get very bad smell. That's why. So we have to appreciate the decomposers, bacteria and fungi. They are decomposing their bodies. So decomposing and they are re-adding the nutrients into the soil. Re-adding the nutrients into the soils. So this is about the interdependence among the biotic components. Interdependence among the biotic components. So next one, there are one more activity is there in your textbook. Look at that activity. There are some questions in there. Like activity 1, there are so many examples they have given. Plenty of the interdependence among the biotic components. For examples, look at on the top, lion is there, lion. In the below, what is there? Grass, like some vegetables, like some crops is there. At the next level, we can see some insects and rat, rabbit, goat, deer. On the next level, we can see some fox, snake, frog, fishes. And the next level we can see some cranes, owls, eagles, peacock. How they are depending on one organism to another organism. For example, if you take the last left one, plants is there, and the plants some insects are depending on. This insects eaten by fish. Fish eaten by crane. Crane eaten by tiger or lion. So this is about how they are depending on. Next level, next one is crops. Some insects eaten by frog. Frog is eaten by snake. Snake is eaten by peacock. So how they are depending on one organism to the another organism. There are some questions is there. Look at the question. Which are the producers in the food web? Which are the producers in the food web? Producers, they can prepare their own food. For example, what are their names? Like grass, like carrot, like beans, like some crops. They are producers. They can prepare their own food. Which are consumers? Consumers, the one will depend on the producers. The one will depend on the producers. What are they? Rat, rabbit, insects, and deer also, goat also. Where does the food web start from? Where does the food web start from? Food web start from the producers. Food web start from the producers. Where does the food web end? Where does the food web end? Food web ends the carnivores. Producers, consumers, primary consumers, secondary consumers, tertiary consumer also we can call. Producers, consumers, primary consumers, secondary consumer, tertiary consumers. We can also call carnivores. We can also call tertiary consumers. Tiger, lion comes under the tertiary consumer. What happened when plants die in the food web? What happens when plants die in the food web? There is no food for the consumers, primary consumers. If there is no food for the primary consumers, then how they will survive? They will also die. If primary consumers are dying, there is no food for the secondary consumers, they will also die. If there is no food for the secondary consumers, tertiary consumers also will die because there is no food for the tertiary consumers. The entire food web will be destroyed. If one organism from the food web is damaged, so the whole food web will be affected. So if the tigers are also not there, what happens? So tertiary consumers is not there, what happens? The secondary consumers percentage will be increased. Like a peacock number will be increased, like cranes number will be increased. What happens? What is the disadvantage of if secondary consumers is increased? If more secondary consumers number is increased, there will be a less primary consumers. If the number is increasing and increasing, one day they will not get food for the primary consumers. So if there is no primary consumers, what happens? The plants number will be increased. So there is a total disturbance in the food web. Disturbance in the food. This is about activity. So the next one. So that's why in a food web, all the organisms is very, very important. Every organism is important in the food web. Changes in the ecosystem. ecosystem. What changes we can see in the ecosystem? How the nature will controls. For examples, so in the food web, if the number is increasing, if the population is increasing, if the plant is increasing, so the primary consumer is increasing, how the changes will take place. So some scientists says thus, the nature will take place. The nature will control the natures. The nature will control the natures. For example, if grass is increasing, what happens? So the primary consumers will start eating. The primary consumer number is increasing. Secondary consumer they will destroy the primary consumer. They will depend on the food from the primary consumers. So these are the step-by-step food materials from producers to top primary consumers, secondary consumers and tertiary consumers. So by the nature itself, so this nature is going to control, the food web will be controlled. For example, suddenly earthquakes. When earthquakes comes, sudden changes will take place in this ecosystem. If the earthquake comes, what happens? There are thousands, lakhs of people will destroy. The animals will live in a particular place, animals will also destroy. There are so many natural disasters, like earthquakes, floods, volcanic eruptions, forest fires. There are some human intervention also is there. Human intervention also is there. Due to this sudden changes, so this floods, earthquakes, forest fires, volcanic eruptions, like some tufans, there are some heavy rains. So there are so many destroys will take place in the ecosystem. Sudden changes will take place in an ecosystem. Finally, so types of ecosystem. What are the types of ecosystems is there? Types of ecosystem. Actually, there are two types of ecosystems is there. One is natural ecosystem, another one is artificial ecosystem. Natural ecosystem, another one is artificial ecosystem. Natural ecosystems, another one is artificial ecosystem. What is natural ecosystem? Again, we have two types. One is terrestrial ecosystem, another one is aquatic ecosystem. Terrestrial ecosystem, another one is aquatic ecosystem. What is terrestrial ecosystem? There are three types of terrestrial ecosystem. One is grassland ecosystem and forest ecosystem. Last one is desert ecosystem. Aquatic is nothing but water. So water also is one type of ecosystem. Water is there. Water is a mixture of oxygen and hydrogens. Sunlight will be there. Plant will be and there plenty of fishes, all the living organisms. So many living organisms will present in the aquatic ecosystem. So there are two types. One is freshwater ecosystem. Second is marine water ecosystem. Freshwater ecosystem. Second is marine water ecosystem, salt water ecosystem. These are the different types of ecosystem. Natural ecosystem, artificial. What is the artificial example of artificial ecosystem? So for example, park is artificial, the one made by human beings. Aquariums, fish cultures, especially they are made by artificial. Aquacultures, where the small fishes started growing, small plants is there, fishes will be there, like crabs, snakes, other organisms is there. So artificial, the one who made by the human beings are called as artificial ecosystems. So these are the different types of ecosystem. Different types of ecosystem. Okay. So today homeworks. So this is the one homework. Write the types of ecosystem flowcharts. It's there in your textbook and workbook. Another one is, so from the activity 1 and the first one, the interdependence among the biotic components, there are some questions is there, like questions. Write the questions and write the answers. You can find the answers in the figure. And the same thing, the activity 1 also. Activity 1 also. There are some questions is there. So you have to read the question and write the answers. Find out from the figure. So today homework, from the two diagrams, some questions is there. So write questions and answers, 2 from 2 diagrams, and these types of ecosystem. Very easy. Okay. Thank you, students.